All right, can you guys see the stream?
The quality is a bit low, but let's see the sound. I cannot hear it right now.
Yeah, I have an issue. Today I have an internet issue, so you might have to bear with that. All right, let's go through it.
You see,
designer doesn't need a designer.
okay. Is your question
Why
mean?
should the universe?
Sure. Is your question meaningful?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you a similar question. Who is the father of Santa Claus?
He invented class. Is this Santa Claus?
Okay. So if I ask a question like who's the father of Santa Claus when Santa Claus doesn't exist, the question is not meaningful. If you don't believe God exists, then ask who created God. It's not a meaningful question.
It's a theological, it's a philosophical question.
It's not a meaningful question from your side. If you are going to ask a question, the question that you should ask should be meaningful to you.
It is.
Good. Do you believe in a God?
No.
Okay. So asking who created this God that doesn't exist, is that a meaningful question?
The designer
All right, guys, any takers?
Yeah.
I mean, it was very obvious that Mansur was probably trying to avoid it or divert it somehow, because his question was very clear. He's asking about your Mansur's worldview. It's an internal critique. If you're because of course we haven't seen what he just said, but I'm assuming what he talked about was we see design, there must be a designer. That might be his argument, and that is why this person said that who designed the designer then. Now that was a fair question to Mansur, because Mansur gave the argument that a design must have a designer. Based on that, one could ask, well, if a design need a designer, does a designer also need a designer? Now Mansur came up with a very ridiculous response to that you don't believe in God. Why are you asking this question? Well, he's asking this question from you. He's pointing out the problem in your argument, and I mean, it's quite ridiculous the way he responded to that.
Yeah, I think Kylie is correct. So that's what I would say as well. I mean, it really depends on why that objection is made. So let me just give dues to how this it's a very popular cliched atheistic objection now, to say who designed the designer. Let me just try and give a few examples of where it's misused. In the sense that if somebody believes in God and hasn't really given the arguments why, and then if you come along and say what caused God to exist or who designed God, it might be inappropriate, and Mansur might be correct if the argument is that God is by definition a being that is uncreated. If you can establish that by other means and so on, then that's absolutely fine. Because philosophically, there might be nothing wrong with the idea of an uncaused first cause, right? Or a necessary cause. There's nothing wrong with that philosophically. There's no contradictions and so on. So there's no contradictions in thinking there might be an entity which is conscious that doesn't have a cause or a designer, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. But it really depends on. So when an atheist just randomly says in any argument, like let's say that somebody's arguing the Kalam cosmological argument, and then you come along and you go, well, who designed the designer? Well, we're not talking about that anymore. So it tends to be inappropriate in that context. However, as Kylie has said, and it's an internal critique, if you're building an argument saying that all things need a cause or complex objects need designers, then obviously the Humean objection, David Hume's objection to that was, if complex and intricate and intelligent things usually need designers, then God, being an even more complex, intricate, intelligent thing, needs a designer. But if the theist wants to arbitrarily, special pleading wise, exempt God from that rule, then why can't the atheist exempt these seemingly designed objects, for example, mountains, DNA, brains, from that rule as well? Why does the buck stop at God? So that's the objection. And if intricate and intelligent or organized objects need designers, then obviously God needs a designer. But if the buck needs to stop somewhere, then the theist already admits of an exception. He admits that not every intricate, complex object requires a designer. And how does he determine, therefore, what that object is? It could very well be, you know, if God doesn't need a designer, it could very well be that the universe. Why don't we just stop there? It doesn't need a designer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point I was coming at. If you can just dismiss that question because that's your worldview, that you don't believe in a God, then you don't believe that universe is. So you can just dismiss that question right over there as well. That okay, universe doesn't require a designer, pretty much, right? So that's the argument. Shall we move on to the second one? Mahadin, sorry, I interrupted you in between.
No, it's all right.
Were you finished?
I think Ugba is saying, I think Mansur is right. So yeah, we don't know what the arguments were, right? But it's an internal critique. I mean, if the theist wants to say, it depends how they build the argument. If the theist wants to say all causes require a creator, sorry, all effects have a cause, or all things have a cause, and then a basic cosmological argument, not even the Kalam, all things have a cause. Then he wants to say that the universe must therefore have a cause, but he then makes the argument that God caused the universe, but God doesn't have a cause. Then it is special pleading in the sense that he's forcing the requirement that the universe must have a cause, but then arbitrarily defining within the definition of God as being a causeless being in itself, and therefore that is special pleading. Because why isn't the universe by definition a causeless being as well, right? On
Exactly.
the other hand, if there's more, and this is why the original cosmological arguments didn't have that weight or power, or the original design arguments didn't have those power. Then you have something like the Kalam cosmological argument, which is a bit better in the sense that it requires everything that begins to exist as a cause, but things that don't begin to exist, they don't need causes. And then God is the type of being that didn't begin to exist, right? And then William Lane Craig tries to deductively show that it can't be a natural cause, but it has to be a divine being. So that's a bit better to get closer to showing that it can't be the uncaused first cause cannot be a natural thing. The uncaused